Angelina here with Mint and Porter Design Co., bringing you the best tips for freelance web design. In this video, I'm going to be interviewing Nicola Reyes. She is a front-end software engineer here in Colorado Springs. We talk about how she became a software engineer with no college degree, her opinion on being a female in tech, learning how to code, and how to get started if you would like to be a software engineer. If you would like to stay in the know about the latest web design strategies, consider subscribing. Hey, how's it going?
Hi. Thank you for having me here today.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you're on. You have such an inspiring story, and can you introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Well, my name is Nicola Reyes. I'm a software engineer with a strong front-end background. I work for Trinio. We are a data-driven company. What software engineers do is we engineer computer programs and web apps for a number of industries.
So how did you start your journey? Were you always a coder?
Well, while I've been coding by definition since I was 14, I don't really feel like I've been coding until about 2 years ago. I started on Xanga and MySpace for personal, online presence. I mean, you know how important that was when you were in school and you don't have any real responsibilities. So that was kind of like what I did with my time when I got home from school, is just make my page really nice.
Nice. So definitely familiar with MySpace, but what was the other one you mentioned?
Oh, it's Xanga. That was a little bit further back. It was more like an online diary, basically, that everyone could read. It was kind of
That's cool.
It was like a blog, but we treated it like a diary.
So you've always been really tech driven and interested in this kind of thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
But I mean, you never really grow out of imposter syndrome.
Yes, I feel that.
Right. When you get a really good job and you feel like you fooled someone to get there. I mean, it's so common when you're a coder. I find it to be a really funny phenomenon. You get thoroughly tested before you get hired. At every single job I've applied for has been, okay, well, here's your coding test.
Yeah.
And that's kind of stressful in and of itself, but once you pass it, there's no reason for you to feel it just doesn't go away.
That's awesome. No, and I know a lot of people are interested in kind of the interview process, so let's definitely circle back around on that, because I'd love to get kind of your insight and what you went through and any tips to kind of get past the interview. Awesome. So what piqued your interest in learning how to code?
Well, it all started with making my presence online relevant and unique.
Yeah.
I would start off with themes and modify them to make them different.
Nice.
So maybe, I would look at the CSS code and I would find the picture file, and then it'd be okay, so background image, and then this URL probably changes the picture. And that's kind of how it started. I started putting two and two together. And I worked a ton of service jobs while I was raising my family, and I wasn't making ends meet. So I began looking for alternatives and what fields I could go into, and I remembered my own hobbies. And this is when I actually started actively pursuing programming as a real career possibility.
Nice. That's super inspiring. Very cool. I love that you mentioned you kind of dug into the back end of websites and just started figuring out how do they work. I think that's definitely a good sign that maybe you're meant to be an engineer, because you try to kind of dissect things and you have an analytical brain, which is very cool. Nice. So what was your, hold on. I have a question before that. Does someone need a college degree to become a software engineer?
Absolutely not.
Awesome.
This is actually a huge misconception in our field. I see it in comments all the time. Don't waste your time if it's not an accredited college. And honestly,
great tip.
This is absolutely terrible advice. When I started, I enrolled in college. And during my college experience, I kind of felt like this was too slow.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just my school, but they spend a lot of time teaching you irrelevant things. It just takes a long time. Taking 4 years to learn how to code seems a little excessive. So I took the time while I was in school to enroll in other courses simultaneously on freecodecamp.org.
Yeah, love CodeCamp.
Yeah, they're great. And then on Udemy, I love them as well.
Great resources.
But and then they're very cheap. I mean, I've been to college. I have 9 certificates. I've taken online boot camps. Given myself personal challenges with my own personal projects. But I never graduated college because after I had the projects, GitHub, the certificates. At this point, this was enough for someone to extend a job offer as a website designer
It's
at a
amazing.
marketing company,
Yeah.
which was backed with one of the largest dealer groups in the state. It did take me applying diligently for about 8 months before I found a company to extend an offer. And my starting pay was $50,000, which is very low for the field. And I negotiated it up from 45.
But still pretty high in general. I mean, especially your first like good job right out the gate, which it's very cool. I've had the pleasure of being friends with you and seeing your whole journey, and really like you're one of the people that inspired me to drop the graphic design and go all in web design and front end web development. So I think it's pretty damn inspiring.
I mean, if you're considering this career path, don't spend thousands of dollars on a college degree. Find either a private teacher or a Udemy course and build your own projects. Like if you build enough projects that you think that like this would be equivalent to a college degree, this is kind of like what people look for. They just want to know that you can do it. And you know, this job that was paying me $50,000, they wanted me to continue improving and be, you know, the best designer I could be.
Yeah.
So they started paying for my Udemy courses at that point.
Nice.
And my design improved dramatically.
Good perk.
And to be honest, I have about $25,000 of student loan debt, completely useless. It resulted from the parroting of how important it was to have a degree, which I have nothing to show for. And then I have $0 of debt for my code camps, which I have 9 certificates in. So I don't really recommend going to college.
Well, no, it's incredibly inspiring, and yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely both pros and cons to going to college. Like, for instance, like I have a bachelor's degree in fine art. I was a painter originally before I went on to graphic and web dev, but now I'm a business owner and I have no use for my degree, which is ironic. However, it did help me get my foot in the door. So I think, yeah, it's important to know, like, for the viewers, kind of exploring different options. It depends on which way you want to go, but it's good to know that it's not required to become a software engineer, and just your grit and your tenacity and your personal projects and just consistency and never giving up is what really got you here.
Don't get me wrong, you know, the college experience is the college experience at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know, that people want to have the college experience, and there's nothing wrong with going that direction.
Sure.
There's some people out there who don't necessarily have that option, and if they are looking for a way to find a good career path, and maybe they should look into this particular career path.
Well, yeah, no, thanks for definitely clarifying that. And I just love that there are different options, and I think the point we're trying to kind of drive in today is that it's not required, that there are different paths to becoming a software engineer for sure, which is very cool. Nice. Okay. I wanted to ask you as well, you said personal projects, and were you putting them out like on a website, on social media, on GitHub? Where should you put out your personal projects?
Well, the tech industry is huge, and there are a ton of platforms you can use if you research a few of them. But some of the ones that I used was codepen.io.
Yep.
I put a lot of like public projects there that you can physically see the code as well, and you can see what it looks like. And then some places I put it in GitHub. Having a GitHub is really important.
Yeah.
So if you just take all the code that you put, and you just find a way to get it from your computer to GitHub, especially if you look into doing the terminal code, there's a way that you can hook up your GitHub to like your command line. And when you hook that up, you can literally just write your code, save the file, and then literally just have a command, and it'll send it to your GitHub.
Nice.
So there's a lot of really great tools out there, and I highly recommend just looking around and see what fits best, what you're looking for.
Very cool.
Like, for example, like everything I just gave you was more front end, CSS, HTML.
Yeah.
But if you're going into C#, .NET, Fiddle.NET is probably the way to go.
Okay, definitely. I'll definitely drop those resources in the description below so our viewers can see that. So thank you for that. And yes, I love CodePen too, because I love how you can literally see where it's under the hood. It's like it breaks down your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and you can see all the components and different windows working together, which is kind of a beautiful thing. So awesome.
You can even add additional like preprocessors. Like if you're learning Sass, you can hit the little gear icon on the CSS part, and then change the preprocessor to Sass and practice other languages as well.
Nice.
So it's really powerful.
know that, and that is a goal of mine. It has been for a while, so that's good to know. Thanks. Awesome. Okay, so you talked a little bit about your journey to your current position, which is really inspiring, so thanks for that. Okay, here is a question, and this is going to be personal to everyone, but is coding hard?
Yes and no.
Okay.
It's very logical. Like, is math hard? Well, in the case of like 2x plus 1 equals 3, no, probably not. But when you start getting into like vertex operator calculations and spectral sequences, yeah, it gets hard.
What?
Right, and no, that's what I mean. It's those particular things. Those are mathematical concepts that get difficult. But like there are other mathematical concepts, like in algebra, like simple algebra, find what x is, that are really simple. And a lot of coding is really like the more the simple math. You get into the more complex stuff once you start learning machine learning, those types of languages, they're crazy, but.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I saw this interview with Bill Gates, and he said this about coding. He's like, it's really just logic. It's if this, then that. And I thought that was such a clear way of describing coding. But you mentioned math, which is a really good thing to touch on. Were you good at math before? Were you like a math whiz, and this helped you get into CS, or like, what was your journey? Do you have to be good at math to be good at coding?
Well, okay, so when I was a little kid, I was always like really excelling in math. And then come high school, I was still relatively good at math. Come college, math started getting like really difficult.
Yeah.
And admittedly, I did not do that well on the higher level math courses. I mean, a lot of math though does tend to be very logical, like if this, that, you know, and that's in general, as long as you know the methods of how to do something, then you can get it done. So, yes and no. I'm not a math whiz. I'm not a mathematician. I can't give you like crazy equations of how things are shaped or anything. I'm not a mathematician. But do you need to have like a clear understanding of logic? Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so you do not need to be like, what is his name? Matt Damon in Good Will Hunting, but you just need to understand logic.
No.
Okay. Okay, reassuring. Awesome. So if someone is just starting to learn how to code, what languages do you recommend starting with?
Well, everyone has their own path, but the easiest way to go is to start with web development.
Okay.
It's small scale. You begin learning architecture. You'll start to dabble in back end once you're part of a team. And you'll come across a lot of the same problems at a minor scale, which will prepare you for back end learning.
Awesome. So you mentioned web development. What are like some of the you must know, like start with something first? Like what would be like first language you would recommend starting with?
Oh, well, you're going to have to learn HTML and CSS simultaneously.
Okay, perfect.
Because it's like you need both to kind of like. So with HTML, you got to put all of the elements on the page.
Yeah.
But they're worthless if they're just like text and a blank button that's just it has nothing. You know, like you have to make it look nice.
Yeah.
So learning those two things in hand are really important.
Totally agree. Yeah, because you have HTML, which is like the structure, and then you have CSS, which is the design, and they kind of they work well together, or it's really needed because back in the day we actually used to design with HTML, which was terrible. So thank you, CSS. That's so funny. Okay, so currently, what's your favorite coding language and why?
SAS.
Okay.
Once you learn what every single CSS pseudo class does and what each CSS property does to an element, you begin dabbling in things like SAS. And it introduces you to compilation, minification, file architecture, nesting, which, by the way, totally changes the game. You have like an element, and you can nest a class inside that element. Game changer. I wanted that since I was 12, 14. But yeah, since I was a kid, coding
nice.
smaller, websites.
No, very cool. Yeah, so for anyone that doesn't know, SAS is a CSS preprocessor, and it is basically like a shorthand way of writing CSS, which, yeah, like I mentioned, that's a goal of mine to learn, has been for a while. How did you go about learning SAS?
Well, so I took actually, it was included in a lot of my certificates.
Okay.
And I started dabbling into it further, as I got down down the line in my career, and I wanted to organize my CSS a little better. I mean, it really just gives CSS an additional toolbox. I love to play around with the mixins, which is how you can create functions to extend element structures. Like if you have, that a button will have like a hover style, and like you want the color to change, and that's it. You can create like functions that will do that, which is really great. And then, that's probably my favorite part about SAS is probably the mixins. They're tough, but man, they save you a lot of time.
That's very cool. So yeah, you can become a faster coder, and then you mentioned you can minify, which will reduce the size and make your website load faster, which is just always a good thing. Very cool.
And I will actually say that learning about space and memory is the most important thing you need to learn before you go into the back end, like actual back end, not like front end development, but like the logic and how the program functions. You have to understand how memory works. So learning about minification and understanding that you need less space, all of these things matter.
Yeah, no, I mean, to that point, I think that it creates, and correct me if I'm wrong, like less vulnerability for your website for cybersecurity attacks as well, and just having less code on your website will just make it more secure as well.
Absolutely, and you'll find that all of these tech positions do end up kind of dabbling with each other as well. You end up being a team.
Yeah, so you kind of learn all these components, and that helps you just become better in tech in general, which is very cool.
Don't be too concerned about learning like all of software engineering.
No, it's good. It's good advice.
So much.
It's very overwhelming. I mean, any field in tech is very overwhelming. So even when you start saying just web development or just software engineering, that's really reassuring that you, like, a little bit by little bit, you'll eventually learn it all. So
now, on the note on my favorite languages, I will say there is another language that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
And this is more speaking on the back end. It's F#, and it's because it's so unique.
yeah.
I love it. Basically, it's a functional programming language as opposed to an object-oriented language. I'm currently building a chess game in it.
That's so cool. And so I know a lot of us have heard of C#, but what about what is F#? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So some people think that C# and F# are like F# is like a derivative of C#, but actually they're more like sibling languages.
Okay.
They are both made by Microsoft, and particularly like for .NET. And the difference is one is functional and one is object-oriented. The difference between functional and object-oriented programming is one has a lot of functions and one is based on the object. So you're building a movie website, like movies are an object, right? And what those movies do but in functional programming is, okay, this is the first function and this is what you do. This is the next function. So it's kind of
Yeah.
different, but they both kind of do the same thing.
Well, I'm super excited for you. Like, I can't even wait to see where you'll be in 5 years if you're learning like this level of programming right now. It's gonna be amazing. It's awesome.
With help, though, my team is incredibly smart. I can't speak highly of them enough. Some of them work for IBM and Microsoft, and I mean they're really intelligent.
Nice. So there's really kind of this power of mentorship, and don't do it alone if you can all help it. If you have a team that's willing to help you, definitely utilize that.
Which is why I say educate yourself on the smaller scale, get yourself in the door in a team, and find a mentor. That's the best thing you can do for yourself.
That's awesome. You see a lot of other women in your industry, and what's your opinion about that?
No.
Okay.
Unfortunately, women make up about 23% of the tech industry, which is really discouraging sometimes. But I mean, you could look at it in a different way. If you're a woman, they'll likely want to hire you if you're talented,
Yeah.
because they want to have different It's not that these companies don't want it. And so, actually, something that a lot of people don't know is Ada Lovelace was the first programmer, and she was a woman. And I believe that women would actually be really good at this because of the daily tasks we do all the time. It's just one of those jobs where you can work remotely and make a really good salary. So my personal opinion is that more women should get involved.
That's super insightful. And who was the woman that you mentioned?
Ada Lovelace.
Nice. Okay, well, I'll definitely have to look her up and drop a link in the chat because that's super inspiring. I did not know that. Very cool. Yeah, I definitely, it's one of the reasons I love having you on today because you're one of the few women in tech, especially in in high-level tech in Colorado Springs that I personally know, and it's really inspiring to see. So I'd love to see more women in tech, girl programmers. So that's very cool. Thanks for being on. So what are your plans for the future?
I really love my current job.
Nice.
And I want to see where this takes me. I don't see myself leaving. Intraneo has a CEO, which is one of my personal heroes, who started out as an engineer like me, but saw a need in the financial markets and took charge. And she's also a woman, so again, I really look up to her. And we're a steadily growing startup company, which during this pandemic has actually brought us more business. More people in the financial institutions want to know what's going on with the fundamentals of companies to make the best financial choices.
Nice. Well, that's super inspiring. And I've heard this term FinTech. Would you be part of financial tech, FinTech movement?
Yes.
That's nice.
I am part of FinTech.
I see it in a lot of hashtags and profiles of people I follow, like in UX and UI, and so that's very cool. Would you recommend getting into the FinTech industry? Is that a good place to start your career?
Well, so ironically enough, I actually fear databases.
Okay, elaborate.
I always have, but and I ended up in a data-driven company. So it's actually pushing my boundaries. It's making me learn and feel more comfortable with things that I felt uncomfortable with before. So FinTech is, I want to call it fanatic tech.
Okay. Why so?
You get to a point where you start geeking over this data. It's weird.
Nice.
So it's not for everybody. There's a lot of marketing companies for everything they work for. There's a lot of, with web development, front end development, software engineering, your horizons are so broad.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So don't necessarily limit yourself to one industry, but just kind of maybe follow your passion and see what opportunities are there for you.
See what opportunities are there for you. If it's new, uncharted territory, go for it. That's my mantra.
Well, awesome, because it's tech, so why not, right? We're kind of on the leading edge.
You'll have a team. You'll have help.
That's awesome. Very cool.
You have Google.
Exactly. Utilize Google, folks. It's the best thing ever.
Professional Googlers.
Coders are professional Googlers. I'm gonna have to make a meme out of that. That's awesome. Okay, one thing I wanted to ask you before we close out this interview is you mentioned the interview process for getting your job. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you prepared and any advice you have for other people about to go through this?
Okay, interview process. So interview process is difficult. I'm going to tell you right now. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They're not necessarily always hard questions that they're asking me for. They're just challenging. In my first job, they gave me a blind coding test. So they gave me a computer, they gave me no internet, and they gave me a text file, and they told me to make a header, a sidebar, and a body.
No kidding. No internet for a coding test.
No internet, and I had to put that together. But it doesn't have to be crazy. It was just a header, sidebar, and a body.
Yeah.
And you can still open up the file as long as you link together the CSS file, right?
Right.
So that was one of my coding tests for my first job.
Interesting.
Actually, that was it. That's all they tested me for.
Yeah.
The next job, they gave me about a 6-hour long process.
Wow.
where they sent me a link, and they had me do a series of projects. So the first one was replicate this item exactly, and it was like a profile card with a picture, and so I did that. Due to my expertise in HTML, CSS, and all that, I was able to make it really advanced hover style. So I went the extra mile with that. And then they asked me to create a post-it note app with JavaScript. So I did that.
Nice.
And the last one was to create like a Figma doc, which, if those of you who don't know what Figma is, it's just like a wireframe program that you can use to build a UI.
Used a lot.
It so that you can show it to other designers or developers, so that they can go off of the designs. So they had me do that. I completed that test, and I did good enough on that test to be called in for an interview. When I got called in for the interview, I was not expecting a second test. From what I read online, is that it's kind of cool for companies to make you go through 2 tests.
Oh no.
And,
surprise.
And you know what? It's fun. It happens. So just be expecting that every single time until you have a job, every single time that they come to you, they're going to test you somehow. Just keep that in mind. And I mean, just look over the requirements of the job position and make sure you're really versed on those things, or at least relatively versed, where you can, like, kind of like fandangle or maybe like Frankenstein together, like, because it's really what matters is like you try. So when I got the call, they're like, hey, come in for an interview. So I told my job, hey, I'm taking a big PTO, and I have stuff to do. And so I went to the interview, and it was really, really intimidating. Because it was like 6 of the brightest minds in Colorado.
Yeah.
Some IBM, some machine learning experts, some Microsoft, and I had to create a recursive function on the whiteboard.
No pressure.
I didn't know any back end. It was like it was terrifying. I didn't know how to do it. So like I heard the instructions, which was you have an item inside an item inside an item, and you have to like check through all of them. Okay, so like that's the difference. So eventually, I failed miserably.
Oh no!
By the way, failed miserably. I didn't know how to solve it, but I did keep trying. In the end, being a programmer is an attitude. If you're coding, logging off exactly at like 5 o'clock on the dot and calling it a day, you aren't doing it right. You end up a coder because you have a problem that's just not perfect or right, and you aren't satisfied until you solve it completely. And I displayed this particular attitude and never beat myself up in the process. I got a call literally on my way home, letting me know I had gotten the job, and they asked me when I would like to start.
That's
I
amazing.
asked them why they chose to hire me. They said it was because I failed gracefully.
Oh.
Just remember that you have to have that determination to solve the problem. He said you failed so gracefully, but you didn't give up, and we admire that.
I love that. That's so inspiring. One of my favorite quotes says, like, fail often, fail better. So I'm totally with you on that.
Fail fast. You can always, mistakes are undoable with coding. There are Control-Z options.
Yeah.
And no matter how far down the wrong road you've gone, turn back, fix it.
This was incredibly inspiring. Thank you so much for being on. Where can people reach out if they'd like to connect with you? And do you have any last words of advice for people trying to become a software engineer?
I'm actually found just about anywhere on social media. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram, although I'll admit I'm not that active on Instagram. You'll find me more active on LinkedIn. Honestly, my best words of advice is don't give up, no matter how much gibberish you feel like you're hearing. Just keep doing it. It all sounds like gibberish, I promise. It all all, it doesn't stop until you get further down the line. Then these things start clicking as you do them. Don't give up on yourself. You can do it.
So I love to create content about freelance web design life. If you'd like to stay up to date about the latest web design strategies, consider subscribing to my newsletter. Hopefully this gave you a little more insight into what it takes to become a software engineer. What career are you aspiring to? Type it in the comments below. For resources listed in this video, visit the description below. If you liked this video, smash that like button, share it with your friends, and be sure to subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, you might also like these videos here and here.